He created some of the most iconic characters of all time.
This is a really, really proud moment. The Tooting Popular Front's first ever liquidation squad.
With your diploma and my yuppie image, we're on our way up.
And of course, some memorable catchphrases.
What a plonker.
Power to the people!
During the war,
You dipstick.
From his working-class South London roots, he rose to become one of the most successful writers Britain has ever produced.
For me, he is the William Shakespeare of comedy.
I'm Shane Richie, and over this next hour, I'll be looking back at the life and career of the one and only John Sullivan.
I can't say his name or see his face without smiling.
Hearing from his closest family,
I think over the years, my dad often produced his best work when he was up against it, you know.
friends,
I'll meet you in such and such pub. We'll have a bit of a drink and a bit of lunch. Don't bring the car.
and colleagues.
He's one man, there's no one else doing it. One day we're going to open up this script and go, that's not quite as good, is it? It never happened.
On BBC Radio Sheffield, this is the magic of John Sullivan. John Richard Thomas Sullivan was born at Christmas on the 23rd of December 1946 in Balham, South London.
I mean, he started off in quite humble beginnings, but he was always very proud of his sort of working class upbringing. John.
It was here as a child he witnessed the market traders that would later influence his most famous character of all. After failing his 11 plus, he realised his passion for writing after discovering the works of Charles Dickens. After leaving school aged 15 with no qualifications and working in numerous low-paid jobs, he set about achieving his dream of becoming a successful writer. After submitting numerous scripts to the BBC to no avail, he decided the best way to get noticed was to approach from within. So, when in 1974 the BBC were looking for a new recruit to their props department, enter a young and enthusiastic John Sullivan.
I think John got a job at the BBC because he wanted to write scripts.
Director Tony Dow.
He'd written some sketches which had got in on the Two Ronnies.
His theory proved right. Before long, he was chatting to the right person, in the right place, and of course, at the right time.
There was a bar for mainly light entertainment producers to refuel their lunchtimes. And opposite that bar was an incredibly well-known producer called Dennis Main Wilson, who was responsible for The Goons and took Tessa's department. But he was also a legend in his own lunchtime. And his office was opposite the bar.
Jim Sullivan.
He loved to challenge my dad, and I think he had to have a few drinks, built up the courage to just go up to him, shook his hand and said, I'm John Sullivan, we'll be working together soon. And Dennis was like, what? Who the hell are you? Like, and but, you know, he said, oh, yeah, I'll have a look at you. I think he sort of admired his bottle to do that.
And Dennis, God bless him, said, I'll tell you what, I'll go and read it now. So probably clutching a couple of beers and a couple of whiskies, read the script, loved it. After lunch, they commissioned the first series of Citizen Smith.
We'll keep the red flag flying.
yeah. Don't write them like that anymore, Ken. Thank God.
I went along to meet Peter Whitmore, who was producing the pilot episode, and he very kindly cast me.
Actor Mike Grady.
And then I got a call from Robert Lindsay saying he'd been cast as the main character. We're delighted to be working together. We were already seeing each other on a daily basis because Bob and I were working on a script.
One day, citizen, one day, there is gonna be a revolution in this country.
Why don't you wrap up?
Citizen Smith debuted on the 12th of April 1977, starring a very young Robert Lindsay, Mike Grady, Cheryl Hall, and of course, someone very close to my heart, Nana Moon herself, the wonderful Hilda Braid.
What are they? Oh, Foxy left 'em here. Him and Kenny are going on a little demonstration with the Tooting Popular What's It.
Not another one. I wish he'd give up these protest marches.
Well, it's better than walking the streets, isn't it, love?
Yeah, I suppose so.
John went from that moment to being under a great deal of pressure to deliver 6 half-hour shows, which is much more difficult than it might sound. And he did a brilliant job under the guidance of Dennis.
It was an episode of Citizen Smith that first introduced us to a face that became very familiar in a later John Sullivan show.
I was sort of flirting with America.
Actor John Challis.
And I kept running out of money, you know, and my agent's going mad because I'm getting offered work back here. And he said, has he been offered a part in a new comedy series? And, oh, what is it? And he said, oh, it's the part of a policeman. And I just remember this character I used to know in a pub in London in the 70s. And he had this curious, pedantic way, nasal way of talking about things, you know.
It's Detective Inspector Humphreys, flying squad. Nice to meet you.
Likewise, so you were saying?
Sorry, what?
Yeah, you were saying you knew there was a load of pocket calculators going very cheap. Yeah.
Yes, Woolworths. Go early.
Sullivan came up to me afterwards in a BBC bar and he said, I really like what you did with that policeman. He said, I'm going to try and use that again one day. But a year later, Only Fools and Horses started.
Following the success of ITV's Minder in 1979, set in modern-day London and starring George Cole as the lovable, dodgy dealer Arthur Daly, the BBC were keen to introduce their own equivalent. When the draft script of a show entitled Reddies was submitted by John Sullivan, it was quickly commissioned into a series, renamed and taking inspiration from the 19th century phrase, "Only fools and horses work for a living," comedy history was about to be made.
I came to the BBC in the beginning of the 1980s.
Tony Dow.
So I had been a director in theatre and it was suggested I could go into television. So I came in on this sort of training course where I trailed loads of programmes. First day, I trailed Blue Peter. And then on the second day, Only Fools and Horses. And I assumed it was a pet show.
The hunt was now on to find the right actors to fill the three main roles. Grandad Trotter and brothers Derek and Rodney. First to be cast was star of Carla Lane's Butterflies, Nicholas Lyndhurst.
Well, I didn't realise that John had seen me in a show called Going Straight, which was the sequel to Porridge, with Ronnie Barker, and I was fortunate enough to be chosen to play his son.
How are you, son? How's it going, all right? I can't shake off this guitar. Ingrid, you see my extendable steel tape measure?
Oh, do you really need it this moment, Raymond?
No. What time is it?
10:02.
I'm late then.
Apparently John saw me in that and just logged me away.
Although he very nearly missed out on the audition.
I'd been out with a friend of mine on a long-term date. We said, oh, we will do it. And I kept putting it off. And eventually he said, it's tonight. We're going to do it tonight. So we went out and we had too much to drink. I can't remember what we were celebrating. Anyway, in those days, scripts used to arrive at your address by a dispatch rider sometimes. And this big stack of 6 episodes was waiting for me on the doorstep. So I just looked at the front page of episode 1 and I went, oh, it's the character's Rodney. Okay. Oh, he's on the first page. Oh, he's on the second page. Christ, he's on every page. So I thought I'd better start reading it now because the little handwritten note was, can you come in at lunchtime tomorrow to read and meet Ray Butt, the producer? So I frantically got 3 or 4 episodes under my belt and realised how clever it was.
Actor Leonard Pearce was hired to play the role of Grandad, and eventually, ironically though, the last to be signed up, David Jason, was cast as the one and only Del Boy.
Oi, Gordon Bennett, Rodney, what is your game? This could be a deluxe Chippendale, and you're treating it like something we're dragging out for the bonfire.
Best place for it.
I suppose I really became aware of John Sullivan when I was asked to go and read for the part of Del Boy. I had seen his work before. This was like Citizen Smith, which I quite liked, but those times you don't really register the writer. You just, you just watch the show. So it wasn't until I went to be interviewed that I first met John Sullivan.
We read with several Del characters, and I have to say that John Sullivan wasn't keen at all to have David on board.
I'd got a reputation of always playing a hapless character, which was a sort of loser, if you like, a down-market sort of character.
You realise it's 6:30? And yet there'd be some silly fools still in bed. I mean, you can't believe it, can you? Well, they could be down here, having a ball with all these old tins.
Listen, Granville, just remember that as my nephew, all these old tins will be yours, when I've gone.
So he was not impressed.
But when the 3 of us started reading together, there was just this spark.
You've got that charm like laser beams, eh, Rodney? Knocks them bandy.
Yeah. It's your ready wit and 3-wheel van that blows their minds.
Yeah.
Why do only fools and horses work a la la la?
Only Fools and Horses first appeared on the 8th of September 1981. Not that you'd have noticed, because it almost vanished without trace.
We got to Series 2, by the skin of our teeth.
We were all in different roles that nobody had seen us in before, and with situation comedy particularly, you have to learn to, the audience, I mean, they have to learn to get to know you and hopefully like you and like the thing you're in.
And then we had a call to go to the head of comedy's office. And I remember going in with David and our producer. And he looked at the ratings and he looked at us. And I thought, well, that's it. Nice run, but it's gone. And he said, I think it's funny. And let's go for Series 3.
What's wrong with going out with a woman of 40?
Nothing. Nothing at all, if you happen to be 50. Right, she's even too old for me.
Well, I'd have to think twice.
We'd just gone away and my dad was literally thinking, shall I give up writing?
Jim Sullivan.
There was a writer's strike and he got the newspaper, and back then you had the charts, TV ratings, and he suddenly saw, because there was a writer's strike, they had to repeat the second series, and he suddenly saw it had gone to the #1. And then I think it was his agent rang and said, oh, John, you've got to get back quick because they want you to write another third series, and then it just totally took off.
The second series and onwards, we got much better because John Sullivan, being as good as he was, he realised what the three central characters were bringing to his original script. That gave him a springboard to think, oh, well, if they're playing it like that, then he subconsciously started to write for us as we were playing the characters. So that's how it went from strength to strength.
It was the second series of Only Fools and Horses that provided one of the most memorable comedy scenes of all time. Who can forget the famous chandelier?
Now, righto, Grandad, you pop upstairs and get the floorboards up. Now, you know what you're doing, don't you?
Don't you worry, Jill. Leave it to me.
Right.
John was telling us a story that had happened to his father during the Second World War when he was working with a group of people and they had to take a chandelier down.
And I said to him, John, you've got to write that. That is so funny, silly. And he said, yeah, do you think so? I said, well, yes, I think it's an unbelievable story.
I don't know. What do you think? No, it's not going to go, is it? And he was talking himself out of it to himself. And we said, you've got to do it. It's brilliant.
Now, come on. Get these ladders up.
And we realised that we'd only got one chandelier.
And Ray Butt, our producer at the time, he came up to me and he went, if you laugh, I'll fire you. And I went, yeah, all right, Ray. He went, I'm not messing around. If you laugh, I will fire you, and I'll tell you why. We've only got the one chandelier. That cost $6,000. If you laugh at that, we've lost the end shot. If we've lost the end shot, we've lost the episode. You're out if you laugh.
I said to Nick before we did the shot, I said, I'll tell you what we do. I'll say to you...
Now brace yourself, Rodney. Brace yourself.
Meaning that they would be, the audience would be thinking, oh, I know what's going to happen. It's going to crash into their blanket and then pull them down off the chandelier. So whilst they were thinking of that, the chandelier in the back went.
And just out of the corner of my eye, I can see Ray Butt, who very, very quietly reached into his trouser pocket, pulled out a hanky, still drilling me the whole time, pulled out the hanky, rolled it into a tight little ball, and stuffed it in his mouth. And then I can see the shoulders like this. And that's the longest 30 seconds of my life. And when they put the clapper down, we finished the shot, the air went blue.
Did you drop it then?
How could we drop it? We wasn't even holding it. We was working on that one.
Well, I wish you'd have said something. I was working on this one.
And that was the clip they showed at our first BAFTA. And I just remember looking across at John from the table and just grinning at him. And he had this big beam on his face.
Me and my brother, we used to call Grandad, Grandad. It was like having three granddads.
By 1983, the show was #1 in the ratings. The British public had a new family they had very much taken to their hearts. So it came as a devastating blow to everyone during filming of Series 4 when tragedy struck.
We came into work one day and Ray Butt saw us in the makeup wagon and he said, look, Leonard's had a heart attack. He's okay. He's in hospital. He's more worried about letting you guys down and not knowing the script, and we've said don't worry about it, we'll pick you up again as soon as you're better, but there's no rush, please don't worry. That's the worst, that's the last thing we want you to do is worry. We were filming a sequence and we went into the makeup wagon for a makeup check, and then Ray just came into the makeup wagon and David was sitting next to me, and he just looked at us both in the mirror and he just shook his head very quietly and left, and we knew.
Leonard Pearce, the beloved Grandad Trotter, sadly died aged 69.
And I just remember David very quietly swearing under his breath, and I went out into the snow and I just burst into tears.
The show was in crisis, but rather than try and gloss over the tragedy, John Sullivan decided to do something that no sitcom had ever done before, to feature the funeral of one of its main central characters.
All right, Tree? Yeah, I'm all right. Well...
Yeah, it's all right. I know, Trig. I know, mate.
And I remember my mum saying to him, "Oh, what were you going to do?" You know, because at the time, I think my dad wasn't sure. Well, should we even just finish it there, leave it?
What the BBC wanted to do was they wanted to get a look-alike to take over and pretend that it had never happened. And both John and I were anti that. And John said that, look, Leonard has died. Nobody wants anybody to die. We certainly didn't want him. Families don't want people to die, and we're a family. So he said, I'm going to go away and write an episode that it just has to happen, like it happens in real life.
I think he did it out of respect for Leonard, you know, to say, well, let's not pretend that it hasn't happened. Let's deal with it in the show, you know, because the show is about a family, and that's what happens, yeah.
Bloody families, I've finished with them. What do they do to you, eh? Hold you back? Drag you down? And then they break your bloody heart.
So that's what he did, and that's what he came up with. I mean, you know, the guy was brilliant.
Well, I mean, this is the other great key to his great writing, to me. It had such depth, because how do you replace him? This much-loved character. You need three of them to bounce off each other in Nelson Mandela Mansions.
I remember at one point they said, I tell you what, why don't we this time have a woman? It sent his aunt to come back. And I said, you must be joking. The reason I said is that you lose so much comedy if you did that, because you push an old man in the back of the van, it's funny. An old lady, it isn't. It's sort of a bit cruel.
John had this idea, thinking on his feet the whole time, about ex-sailor, ex-military, something. He was like on skates, you know, he didn't know what to do either. He had written the series with this Grandad character, with the lovely Leonard Pearce, very much in mind. And Leonard was a brilliant actor. So, yeah, he was thinking on his feet as hard as he could.
Uncle Albert.
Oh, Uncle Albert, is it? Hello.
Your mum asked me to be your godfather.
Oh, yeah, I thought Uncle George was my godfather.
Yeah, that's right. Me and him spun a coin. George lost.
Then Buster, it's just one of those strange things. He happened to write in, and the director got the letter, and he sent a photograph, and we just all looked at it, and it just happened to come into the office around the time that we had the gap, because we had to regroup because of Leonard's death. And whilst we were trying to set up what we were going to do, then Buster's letter came in. We interviewed him, and the rest is history, as they say.
Buster Merrifield was cast as Uncle Albert Trotter, the seafaring brother of Grandad, and the character that would become an iconic part of Only Fools history.
It evolved, because in a funny way the supporting characters became almost as important.
Oh, hello, Marley, my love.
Hello, sweetheart.
Hey!
Actress Sue Holderness.
Well, I didn't meet John when I did my very first episode in 1984. In fact, I was amazingly lucky to get that episode, or indeed any episode. John believed that Marlene should be a sort of Erin Dawes character, but one day he got the idea for an episode where Del and Rodney would have to look after a Great Dane. But he couldn't think where the dog was going to come from. until suddenly he had the idea that Boycie could give Marlene a dog and then decide to take her on holiday, leaving the boys to care for the dog.
Now, you are quite sure you will be able to look after this dog?
Of course I will.
Yeah, oh yeah. Dell's had lots of experience.
That was one of the luckiest things in the world, really, because when you realise somebody's coming into your show playing opposite you, you just hope you're going to get on. And luckily we did, and we've been chums ever since.
But there was one characteristic of Boycie that came purely from the man who played him, something even John Sullivan would have struggled to write on paper.
I just did it one day. It said Boycie laughs. I just did this laugh that I remember a woman doing in a pub. She had this sort of machine gun type laugh. And it was hilarious, and I always remembered it. And I just did it. Well, my own version of it. And everyone laughed and said, keep that in. And I went, what? What did I do? What did I do? You know, and I really hadn't quite realised I'd done it. Have you ever wished you hadn't started something?
There was one running gag in the show that when it first appeared in episode 1 didn't get much response from the audience. It's a gag, however, that grew and grew and grew.
You know my brother, don't you, eh?
Yeah, of course I do. How you going, Dave? Sorry I'm late, Del boy. I had to pop round my sister's to arrange an alibi for next Thursday. What's your Dave? All right, Dave?
Cassandra and Rodney.
Cassandra and Rodney. Dave.
Because back, you know, in that first episode, no one knew what he was about then, but then it starts to make sense, you know. He just lives in a completely different world to everyone else.
And what if it's a boy?
Well, if it's a boy, he wants to call it Rodney.
Yeah? Who after?
And you could just hear the expectant gasp when Roger Lloyd-Pack walked in. You could feel them sitting forward because they would go, I know what's going to happen. And John was brave enough sometimes to leave it what felt like minutes. But then Roger would come out with...
How you going, Dave?
All right, see?
It was nice as an actor because you could just make my character's reaction bigger and bigger and bigger and more frustrated with this arse who doesn't know my name after all these years.
Friend and author of the Only Fools and Horses story, Steve Clark.
I first met John in 1990. I was a young reporter and I was sent to interview him about Only Fools and Horses. And I was lucky enough that we got on well and we continued to keep in contact and talk regularly. I talked to him even back then about doing a behind-the-scenes book about the show, and he said, you know, when the show finished, he'd be happy to do that. He was a man of his word, and he phoned me up and said, do you want to do that book now? And I was lucky enough to get to sort of write the sort of official history of the show.
It's a videotape recorder, isn't it? It's got a little computer in it and everything. When you go on your holidays, this thing will record all your programmes for you.
Amazing.
Yeah, nothing but the best.
How does it know you're on holiday?
You send it a postcard, don't you?
John was a remarkable man. That brilliant eye for spotting funny things that happened in life. You know, he was a great observer of people.
Whilst continuing to write for Del Rodney & Co., John Sullivan introduced Just Good Friends, a brand new series starring Paul Nicholas and Jan Francis as former lovers Penny and Vince, who meet up again 5 years after he ditched her at the altar.
You're looking well.
Yes, well, I play games. Pool, brag, that sort of thing. I'm only about £6 heavier than when we last met.
Really? My mother always said you'd run to fat.
Did she? Bless her.
I think my dad was reading one of my mum's magazines, and there was a agony aunt page, and there was a letter about someone who had just met up with their ex who had dumped them at the altar, and I think that's how my dad sort of thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. So he did begin to explore that. I think he did enjoy it, writing for women.
Do you know what a vegan is, Vince?
Well, of course he knows what a vegan is. Don't you, Vince?
Absolutely. I never missed an episode of Star Trek.
Another new show appeared in 1986, Dear John, and that ran for 2 series and starred Ralph Bates as unlucky in love nice guy John Lacey.
Must have come as a bit of a shock to find your best friend bedding your wife.
Yes, I've had better starts to the week.
Oh, it's amazing.
By the late 1980s, Only Fools and Horses had become a national institution. A testament to John's writing came in 1988 when the show was extended from 30 minutes to 50 minutes per episode. The first of these episodes, Yuppie Love, featured that scene. Yeah, come on, you know the one. The scene that today is still regularly voted the greatest comedy moment of all time. Come on, you know the one. Yes.
I think we're on a winner here, Tree. All right? Play it nice and cool, son. Nice and cool, you know what I mean?
Of course, one of the things that John was so good at was, lots of us see occasionally something funny in life, but John was just brilliant at logging it away.
Steve Clark.
John had seen that happen at the George pub in Balham, and I remember him saying, you know, I just saw it happen in front of me, and he thought, thank you, I'll use that later.
Because the lovely thing is that people come up and say to you afterwards, that thing when he went through the bar, did you rehearse that?
Director Tony Dow.
And you go, no. We just happened to have the bar out and David Jackson fell through the bar. God, we rehearsed it. What I did was I got that barman who was behind the bar to walk out, opening that hatch, closing the hatch, opening the hatch, closing the hatch, subconsciously 3 or 4 times during the previous scenes. If he'd just gone out on that just before it, there would have been someone who's gone, something's going to happen here. And so I said, I'll just hold the shot. He fell through the bar, and then you saw Roger turn to him, turn all the way round. Where did he go? Where did he go? And as he came round to the other one, just before he came round the other one, now you see him, now you don't, now he was there. And then, of course, he comes up with the immortal line, doesn't it? He says, come on, Trigg, let's go. You're cramping my style.
Ain't you going to try for them birds?
No, you're cramping my style, mate. You're cramping my style.
And Roger's face was just the best thing in the world, and the nicest man in the world as well.
When I was like 18, 19, I started to get interested in writing, and so I started reading his scripts before they went out.
Jim Sullivan.
When I watched them, because I knew what was coming, I didn't enjoy it, so I stopped reading the scripts. I preferred it to be a surprise, you know. I enjoyed it as a fan as well, you know.
Now, it was around this time John Sullivan felt the need to develop the show further and introduce love interest for both Del Boy and Rodney. Enter the beautiful Raquel and the gorgeous Cassandra.
I've been going out with you longer than I went out with any of my other boyfriends. And do you know why?
So they all packed you in?
Right. And because I love you.
Oh. Well, I love you too, Cass.
What a load of old cobblers. Makes you want to throw up.
Absolutely terrifying.
Actress Gwyneth Strong.
My background as a child actress was very much method, and it was the first time that I went into a show that I'd actually seen before, and I really struggled with how to use my methods on that programme, and of course I had to ditch them pretty quickly and get on with it, but it was a very, very strange feeling, I must say.
You don't have to prove anything to me, you know, Rodney.
Well, you got a good job in a bank, ain't you? And your dad's a successful businessman, and me, well, I'm an apprentice fly pitcher.
I think John has had a mercurial quality, which is very hard to pin down. So I never, in the early days, knew whether he was pleased or not, really. And actually, the way that I found out that he was pleased was I was originally only booked for 1 episode. And then, you know, a week would go by and another episode arrived, and then another, and then another. So that's how I sort of thought, I think he must be quite pleased with me.
You've got to mature. Certainly if my character had stayed as gauche and as naive as he was when I was 19, I think by series F or whatever, he would have been sectioned.
Rodney and Cassandra were married in an emotional end to Series 6. One that marked the end of an era and the dawn of a new one for the Trotter brothers.
Could you just promise you'll do me a favour?
Of course.
Be gentle with him.
Shut up.
See you when we get back.
Bye-bye.
We're off now?
You know, and it was such a moving moment.
Director Tony Dow.
That last scene with that great track, Holding Back the Years. And I know that John was worried that that episode was going a little bit too much on the drama and not on the comedy. And I think I said to him, Johnny, I don't think you're worrying about anything, mate. They're not laughing, but they're crying.
it was moving forward all the time. And in real life, things move on. And that's why when we were going out with the girls and then we had the kids, so it was a progression all the time, which worked very, very well because it gave John a lot of power to his elbow and took him on a different journey, so a natural process.
Is it Derek?
Raquel?
Yes.
Oh.
Hi.
Hello.
I joined when they'd all been up and running for a very long time. I think Gwyneth had just joined.
Actress Tessa Peake-Jones.
But it was fantastic because the minute I walked in, I was very welcomed. They were like a big family, and I quickly realised that they were all, but particularly David and Nick, but all of them absolute experts at comedy, at timing, at making John Sullivan's work truly come off the page.
And Delbo and Raquel had the baby, it's so charming.
48 hours' time, we'll be going back to our flat with another addition to the Trotter family.
Oi, Del, they said anything about the sex?
Oh, give her time, Rodney.
I hadn't had a child at that time, and now even more so that I have. I thought he wrote that incredibly brilliantly.
Come on, Raquel, give it some welly go.
Okay, relax.
Would you let go of my leg, Del? That's all for you, huh? Would you like some gas and air?
No, thank you.
Again, when it came to the episode where Raquel gives birth to Damien, John drew upon his own real-life experience. When she asked to hold his hand, I remember John saying that Sharon had said that to him, and, she dug her nails in.
Very, very touching.
This is what it's all about. I was born for this moment. Yes. Oh, we're going to have such fun. We are, you mark my words. This time next year, we'll be millionaires.
As demonstrated following the sad death of Leonard Pearce in 1984, John Sullivan didn't shy away from writing pathos alongside comedy. He wrote about real life, something that again was evident in 1996, when one memorable scene featured just Del, Rodney, and a broken lift.
He loved to say to the audience, right, you think this is going to happen, do you? OK, well, you just keep thinking that, and then wham, pull the rug away. Oh, he fell over that way. You thought he was falling over that way. No, he's not. And what's more, she's lost the baby. Sorry, what? She's lost the baby. Is this a sitcom? Yeah. So we're going into miscarriage and... Yep, that's where we're going now.
We were looking forward and all we could see in front of us was this big, wide highway and we were just cruising down it and all of a sudden it came to a shuddering halt. Just like this poxy lift.
The pathos when Cassandra miscarries the child was amazing and beautifully written.
Suddenly happy families became Dungeons and Dragons. And I've never felt sodding pain like that in all my life.
Tony Dow, our director, I think we rehearsed it twice. And he just said, right, I'm leaving it. I don't want to see it now until it's shot.
You could tell by the fact David and Nick really bought into it that it was going to be an important scene for them.
It's almost if I don't talk about it, it might not be true.
But it is.
I know, but if I don't say it...
If you don't say what?
We lost our baby.
That whole episode was extraordinary, really.
John Sullivan had turned Only Fools and Horses into the most popular comedy show in Britain, confirmed by the fact that 24.3 million people tuned in to see the Trotters finally achieve their goal, the moment they became millionaires.
What exactly did it go for?
Oh, £6.2 million. So that's just over 3 million each.
Well, we've had worse days.
The night we finished, I only just got the last line out. I had to say we're not in the business anymore.
He's got 250 electronic carpet steamers, right? Now listen, they retail at 115 quid. He's going to let us have them for 25 knicker.
The hell, we're not in the business anymore.
I know. Rodney, we can double our money on this.
Derek, can you hear me over those trousers? We're not in the business anymore, mate.
And that just came out. The audience rose to their feet. I've never seen a standing ovation like it, and the applause went on and on and on and on. And David and I hugged each other, and there were a lot of tears with all the cast. And then that was that.
John Sullivan not only created and wrote every episode of Only Fools and Horses, his voice can also be heard at the start and end of each episode.
We got some off-price crack ties, some miles and miles of carpet tiles, TVs, deep freeze and David Bowie LPs, pool games, gold chains, what's names and Edda Push, some Trevor Francis tracksuits from a mush in Shepherd's Bush.
Of course, I, like millions of people, thought that was Nick singing that song.
Actress Gwyneth Strong.
I said to Nick, I love that song. I've always loved that song. You did that well, didn't you? And then I, of course, had to be let down. Really embarrassing. And actually, it's not me.
God bless Hooky Street. Viva Hooky Street. Long live Hooky Street. Say magnifique Hooky Street. Magnifique Hooky Street.
That's right, they still think it's me. It's not me. It never was me. No, it's John. I know that John hated it and he had to get quite drunk to do it, apparently.
Once Only Fools and Horses ended, or so we thought, John Sullivan moved towards comedy drama. Over Here starred Martin Clunes, and between 1996 and 2001, Robert Dawes, Philip Glenister and Keith Allen all starred in the minicab series Roger Roger. But demand for more Only Fools was high, and the pressure was on for John to bring back Del and Rodney from one last outing at the turn of the century. But after such a perfect ending in 1996, how did the cast and crew feel about a return?
The stuff that John wrote was so good and so unusual. You don't get that sort of script to work with as an actor very often. But how could you not want to do it? Because he was so strong as a writer, that of course we all jumped at a chance.
It's fantastic. They've lost it. They've lost it all. Of course, who else would lose it all? It just can only be them.
John said, first of all, we all said, he said, there's nothing funny about people being rich. So we've got to stop that straight away. And John, I remember, wrote a fantastic script which started them off as millionaires in South Africa. It was about half an hour of the show, and I remember going in and it was something that had been worrying me. And I phoned John and said, John, I'm just checking you out here, but I've got a bit of a thing about this whole South African thing. He almost interrupted me and said, oh, mate, thank God you said that. I've just wanted to get rid of it. It's not anything to do with us, is it? I said, no. He said, I didn't want to disappoint people. Everybody was going to South Africa. Everybody was going to do that. So we ended up doing a couple of days in Monte Carlo and got them back quick.
Only Fools and Horses came to a definite end in 2003.
He was in the process of writing another one because we had dinner to discuss it, and what it was going to be Del's 60th birthday. And I think we were all going to be up for it, but then he was taken ill.
There were still two characters in the show John felt he could explore further, moving them away from the familiar surroundings of Peckham and to a new life in the countryside.
We always had this feeling that we wanted to live in the country.
Actor John Challis.
And we started looking, we found this place eventually right out in Herefordshire, ancient, 800 years old. So we threw everything at it. And my 60th birthday came up and Carol being Carol, decided to hold a big party and invited everybody in secret, including John. And eventually he staggered up to me halfway through the day. He said, is it? I said, I've had a bit of an idea. I'll get back to you. 2 years later, pitched the idea of the Green Green Grass.
The Green Green Grass starred John Challis and Sue Holderness as the brilliant Boycie and Marlene.
He said, I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get back to you. 2 years, he said. But he said, I couldn't think why Boycie and Marlene would want to leave London.
John didn't like to cheat his audience in writing something that could never happen.
And he was watching a rerun of an Only Fools episode with the Driscoll brothers in it. And he went, that's it. He's grassed them up and he's on the run. That's why they've left.
It's the Driscoll brothers, they're after me!
Well, I'm staying put. I've done nothing wrong.
What, you think they'll let you off? They'll hurt you to get at me. They think I like you.
I adored every second of the Green Green Grass because it gave John a chance to explore the Boycie and Marlene relationship, and that was very enjoyable to play.
He created some of TV's most well-known characters. But what was John Sullivan, the man behind the comedy, really like?
He is so quiet and self-effacing. I still can't talk about him in the past tense, really. He was just, I've said it 1,000 times, he was a genius, but he was so shy. He'd whisper what he did for a living.
He would be far too modest to ever think he was a genius. I think he was obviously confident in what he did, what he was doing. He had a sort of reserved confidence, and he just loved it. You know, he was passionate about it, and he would laugh. You know, if you said that.
He was like a comedy scientist, but he didn't know it. He'd come into rehearsals, and we'd have our script, and we'd read it through, and then we'd get out on the rehearsal room floor, and we'd start doing it. And then he'd just sidle up to us with a little bit of paper and he'd go, try that, where that line is there, cut that out and just put that, very quietly whisper and then disappear somewhere. And we'd say the new line and it would be even better. I mean, it was 1,000 times better. And he'd just stand at the back of the rehearsal room and just nod quietly to himself. That's pretty much all, that's the pat on the back he gave himself, ever, was just a quiet, shy nod.
One of the sort of proudest things that I did in the whole time that I knew John was that somebody, I think it was one of the sound guys, came and we recorded secret messages for him that was going to be played to him for his 50th birthday. He had a huge party as well, but so we each got snatched out of rehearsals one by one to do the recording. I just thought, well, I don't know what to say. And then I started joking with the engineer and I said, do you know what? I can't sing for a toffee. And he said, go on then, sing Happy Birthday. So I sang Happy Birthday to John Sullivan, you know, on my own, a tone deaf, terrible rendition. But the reward of it was that afterwards he said to me that it was one of the funniest things he's ever heard and he cried with laughter. And I thought that's got to be my proudest moment. I made John Sullivan laugh.
He was a good mate and he was my best man at my wedding. It was odd because we are in all ways diametrically completely opposed in backgrounds and things at all. But I think we both had a love of the funniness of things.
In 2010, John Sullivan and the BBC announced a prequel to Only Fools and Horses. Rock and Chips was to be a comedy drama looking back at the Trotter family in 1960s Peckham.
John had been talking about this for a long time, I mean years, but we're talking about the nation's favourite. I think we have to be very, very careful about this.
Kelly Bright would star as Mum Joan, and the first episode would feature the birth of baby Rodney. In a bizarre twist, Nicholas Lyndhurst was to star as Rodney's dad, the gangster Freddie the Frog Robdell.
Anyway, he sent me the script, and I thought, I've got to do it. I don't care if no one watches it. I've got to do this, because the way he described my character as they're not sure whether he's a hero or just mental. I thought, yeah, I can play that. And we were fortunate enough to get Kelly Bright, who was just... I watched her the other night. I watched her doing it the other night. She's just absolutely stunning actress.
Would you like to come to my party, Jane?
Me? Well, it's a bit...
You and Reg?
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Good. I wasn't really looking forward to it. Now I am.
It's doubly heartbreaking because John had to work very hard to get that on. And then by the time we'd done episode 3, John caught this viral pneumonia.
John Sullivan was taken ill in early 2011, and whilst having to spend some time in hospital, none of his friends, family or colleagues were prepared for what was to come.
We were due to start some more rock and chips, we thought. John had texted me that, and I had a special little ping for John on my phone. He had his own noise. And whenever I heard that, I'd be in the bath or whatever, and I'd just run down and see what was going on.
He had a cough and a cold. He just thought it was a normal cough and cold, and he had it checked, and he was diagnosed with pneumonia. And again, we didn't panic. We just thought, all right, we'll just rest.
It was serious, but it was no biggie.
I knew John had been ill. I'd spoken to him perhaps a month, 6 weeks before this point. John had always seemed many years younger than his real age. I used to get texts from him first thing in the morning. "You up, mate? Can you talk?" He'd already been to the gym.
We'd heard that he hadn't been well. Then we heard that he's gone into hospital. So then we were keeping in touch with the family and through the producer and whatever. And I was already booked to go on holiday to America. Before we went away, we thought, he's in the safe hands, he's in the right place, he's in hospital, he's not too well. And then he was coming out of that, or he was over that, and everything was fine.
They said, he's sitting up in bed, he's okay. This was on a Tuesday. He's sitting up, he's had food. They reckon there's a good chance he'll be home by the weekend. Fantastic.
He's sitting up, he's eating, he's drinking, or whatever, So I went, great, okay, I'll come down at the weekend, hopefully I can come and visit. And then on the Friday night, got the phone call, he'd gone.
John Sullivan died on the 23rd of April 2011. The world lost a comedy legend.
And then I got a call, I think it was Saturday morning, from Gareth Quinlan, our producer, who just said that John had lost his battle. And it was, I'll never forget, it was a beautiful morning, such a sunny day. And I just looked out of the window in the garden and I thought, how can it possibly be like this? How can it be a bright sunny day when John's gone? How can that happen? It was just... and I don't know why, I just felt compelled to write to Sharon there and then. I sat down and I wrote her a letter. And I drove it up to his house. And later on, my wife said to me, I shouldn't have let you go because you didn't know really where you were. They had a little letterbox in the gate, so I just put it there and drove away.
We were in Miami, which seemed to be rather ironic because he'd written that episode, Miami, twice. And it was an absolute kick in the proverbials because... you can't believe it, because with any friends or relations or people you know, and this is what hits people very, very hard, is you always expect them to be there, and when they're not, or that happens, I mean, it is such a shock, and especially with John being such talent, it made it even harder to bear, because we realise that you're going to lose, a great talent that this country, seriously needs. And John was extremely gifted.
It's 30 years of our life. We've been doing this man's words, and he's changed our lives. Changed everybody's life. I don't think it'll ever be forgotten, that series. I really don't. I think it meant that much to people. Only fools, I really do. No, he said, I really love these characters. And he did. He loved them. All of them.
He is going to be here forever, fortunately. I always remember Leonard Pearce. He said, have you seen these new things? They're called VCRs. Have you got one? I haven't got one yet. Leonard, because I think they're quite expensive. And he thought, yeah, but don't you see? That means we're going to be around forever. We're never going to die, are we? Which I thought was quite a sweet thing to say.
It was so nice, some of the comments people left online, and I remember one that stands out, because that night that he died, there was a big thunderstorm, and someone left a really nice message saying, "Oh, that's John up in heaven making everyone laugh." You know, and that always stays in my head. You know, it was a really nice thing to say, and yeah.
I heard about John's passing in a phone call from his daughter-in-law early the following morning. It's one of those moments in life you remember exactly where you were. I was in a really, really beautiful garden not far from where I live, and with my family, and it was just the most heartbreaking news. You know, I know he had so much he still wanted to write, but mostly just a terrible, terrible loss to his lovely family.
Yes, and it's a tragedy. It was a tragedy, particularly for his family. But actually for all of us, it was a loss because of the talent and the stuff that might have come ahead, you know, the future writing that we'll now never get. And he's really still very, very missed.
John has left a remarkable legacy of work that generations will enjoy. I have no doubt. You know, I've got young children, and I'm looking forward to showing them Only Fools and Horses in particular. My son is 8, and I've shown him bits of Only Fools and Horses, but he already says lovely jubbly. I think he's picked that up from me saying it, and I know where I've got it from. And I'm looking forward to watching whole episodes of Only Fools with him, and I think I'm far from alone in that. I think there are, you know, lots of people who grew up with Only Fools, and you know, they're showing it to their kids, and those children will be showing it for their children in the future. I think it's something that we will be watching and laughing at for many, many, many years to come.
I go past pubs in London where we've been, you know, and you go, bloody hell, it only seems yesterday I was in there with Johnny, laughing about something or other. I have to go, he's not here. But the one I actually think, oh, well, if I do go, at least he'll be there. Because at least I'm going to have a good laugh. The greatest, the very, very finest man as well.
To me, he's a very, very clever, very funny and lovely man. And I hope people remember him that way. Just lovely, warm, thoughtful, brilliant man. Well, I just miss talking to him.
But one of the things that I would like to say is that there's been a lot of speculation about William Shakespeare never wrote all of Shakespeare's work, right? And the reason, the rationale is, the educated people say, is because he didn't have the education, so he couldn't have written that sort of work. And my answer to that is, well, if you're going to go down that road, John Sullivan was educated in secondary modern school, working class people, and this man, by his genuine wit and ability, wrote some of the funniest stuff that we've ever seen. And so, for me, he is the William Shakespeare of comedy. And that is where his legend and his gift lies for us all to enjoy, and future generations. God bless him.
He'll just be remembered with joy, I think. I can't say his name or see his face without smiling, because he was just such a wonderful person as well. A quiet genius is what he was. I can't really say more than I will miss him so much. And he's still got his special ping on my phone, and I can't bear to erase the voicemails.
I'm Shane Richie, and you've been listening to The Magic of John Sullivan. Written and produced by Steve White and Mark Burrows for BBC Radio Sheffield.